coming out tonight, and welcome. And thanks for welcoming us to this beautiful library. This is a great facility. My name's Whitney Finnstrom. I'm with the Office of Management and Budget in the City of Pittsburgh. And this is the fifth in the series of public needs hearings that we're having around the city. So the goal of tonight is really not to hear me speak, or even to have nice snacks, but to hear you speak about what you see as needs and issues within your own community, within your neighborhood. You know, maybe you're from Carrick, maybe you're from another area, the South Hills, or anywhere in the city. We do want to understand the issues and hear you speak. So I'm just, if you don't mind, just going to go through, give you a quick overview about the federal funds that we're talking about tonight, and a little bit about what they do and don't do, and then open that up and talk to you about this process and why we're here tonight and what we're doing. So the City of Pittsburgh receives federal funds, Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership Funds, HOPWA, which is Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, and Emergency Solutions Grant Fund. So there are four funding pots that the city receives to address different issues. And for most of these, like for instance the Community Development Block Grant Funds, the city is a entitlement jurisdiction, so we get our funding based on a combination of population and poverty levels and so on. HUD has its own formula that no one knows what it is to try to come up with an amount that the city receives. The amount that the city receives, it's roughly 13.5 million. It's probably half of what it was 10 years ago. So, you know, you have greater need, greater issues, and fewer resources to address those issues, right? So people are shaking their heads. They've seen this movie before. The fifth part of this, which is not really funding related directly, is an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, or an AI as we call it. And what that is, it's a snapshot of what the current barriers are to affordable housing. So it could be zoning issues, it could be bank lending issues, you know, redlining, a whole host of things. So what the AI is, as we call it, and sorry if I use acronyms, let me know if I use too many, is a document which looks at the whole overview of what are some of the fair housing barriers. Okay. So just to quickly go over on the next slide, the agenda, we've kind of already gone over it. You know, we're going to review the federally funded programs, give them a name, explain to you what this whole process is that we're doing and why, talk about the AI a little bit, and then, as I said, the main reason we're here tonight is to listen to you speak and provide us with comments about needs. So, as I mentioned, the city receives an annual allocation of federal funds. It's not guaranteed. The city has to apply for it. Cdbg, Community Development Block Grant funds, are more or less guaranteed, but the city has to apply for them. The other funds are a little more contingent, but anyway, based on need. And these funded activities are supposed to be in line with the city's overall goals, according to the comprehensive plan, the city's comprehensive plan. And these funds are used to create strong, viable neighborhoods and inclusive communities with affordable housing. Okay, that's a broad statement, but that's kind of a HUD piece. So, as I mentioned, I gave you some dollar numbers. The CDBG funds roughly this past year were a bit more than usual, but they've hovered around 13.5. Home funds are about 2.1 million, and then HOPWA and ESG are roughly about $1 million each. And each of these programs have different requirements of what you can do and can't do with the funding. So let's just go through them, and I'll talk about the CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant Funds, first. Well, we talk about the consolidated planning process. Yeah. So what we're doing now is kicking off the 5-year planning process. And by 5 years, I mean 2020 through 2024, which seems hard to believe, right? But that's what we're doing. And we're currently under the last year of the last 5-year plan, which is 2015 to 2019. So this is the beginning of the process to develop this document, which we submit to HUD. And it covers areas such as housing need. There's a big housing needs section. It's a housing market analysis. And then there's a strategic plan in there. And very much a big part of this whole process is community engagement and community involvement. So we've had I'm sorry, I won't go through the rest of it. But so really, as I mentioned, citizen participation is the central part of this whole process. And we're really kind of in the first and second steps of this whole little cycle where we want to listen to what people's needs are, and that helps to lay the groundwork for how the funding is spent. And then sets priorities, it helps to determine resources, setting goals, and administering the program. And then in the end, the CAPER is what has to be done that we do at the end of the year. Once the funds are spent, we have to report back and say, you know, if we said we're going to develop 50 affordable housing units, the HUD wants to see, did you do that or not? And that's what that report is. And those are all online, available. So as I mentioned, this is really kind of the first piece of this process, but there's probably since October, maybe September, there have been a lot of public engagement that's been going on. So we've had meetings with homeless organizations, economic development providers, you name it, really broad cross-section, as well as City of Pittsburgh departments, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, DOMI, and DPW, and other agencies, to understand, you know, get a whole picture of what the needs are and how these funds could possibly be used. We tried to use social media. We had a great input. I understand that 85 people were on the Facebook page, which is 83. So that's good. So, you know, we're trying different avenues beyond just the traditional, but Facebook and newspaper ads, and there was something on the news and the Twitter. But anyway, you know, just to increase engagement. And we do have an online survey, and I'll talk more about it at the end, but there is a handout that has a link to the survey, so we do encourage you to complete that survey. And if you have friends, neighbors who would be interested, you know, please feel free to take extra handouts. It has a link right here. We do have hard copies of the survey too, so we don't expect everybody to have to go onto their computer to do that. So we want to make sure we can get feedback as much as possible. And I'm just going to quickly go through the rest because our main point is to listen to you speak. But the Cdbg program has national objectives. HUD says these are the things that big categories, you know, you need to maintain decent, affordable housing, provide residents with suitable living environments, expand economic opportunities. So HUD and, well, Congress, in setting up the program, basically said, hey, we're not going to dictate to you what the issues are and how you're going to address them. That's for the local community to determine how that's done, how the funding should be used. So it's fairly broad, but it has to benefit low and moderate income persons, people making under 80% of median household income. And we have a map, there's one on our website, we can show you the link, that shows where those areas are in the city. And prevention of or elimination of blight is another category, and meet an urgent need, which is rarely used, but it's for like national disasters, you know, flood areas and so on, landslides. But I'm not going to go through every single one of these things, but you know, these are eligible uses, so they include everything from public infrastructure improvements like streetscape improvements, sidewalk improvements, and so on, to public services, you know, housing counseling, helping people to buy homes, fair housing services, home ownership assistance, economic development, and so on. But like any good government program, there are things you can't do with the funds. And these include general government expenses. We can't fund political campaigns, right? So these are all outlined in terms of what you can do and can't do, but there's some flexibility in the program. So as I mentioned, the home program is geared towards housing improvements, rental housing, owner-occupied housing, home buyer assistance. And these programs, this funding actually goes through the Urban Redevelopment Authority, so that it's for their housing programs, housing rehab assistance, and so on. And just as an example, not local but in the city, the Larimer Choice Neighborhood Development, the funds were used for a loan for the affordable rental units.
Are these generally for instance, like a large housing complex? Are they for individual homes, or both?
For both. I mean, a lot of times they use the home funds to leverage larger projects, like the Choice Homes program is a large federal program, and that's just a piece of the whole puzzle funding stream.
So maybe, for instance, several houses or in several block area or something, and then you leverage additional funds to help or something like that.
Right.
Redevelop.
Right. It's because in the end, URA gets about 1.1 million. It's, in the bigger scheme of things, it's not a lot of money. So a lot of those funds are leveraged through other kinds of dollars, state, federal, other federal programs. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant is focused on homeless persons and those in jeopardy of homelessness. And funds are awarded to the city using a formula. And the city works very closely with the county to address homelessness, so that's a major effort, combined effort, city and county. And then it includes street outreach, engagement, case management, emergency services, health and mental health, transportation, and so on, depending on the need. And then HOPWA, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, as you can imagine, is for persons with AIDS. It includes, short-term rental assistance, mortgage, utility assistance, permanent housing, and services for persons living with HIV and AIDS. So switching gears to the analysis of impediments, as I mentioned, this is to look at what the current housing environment is and what are the barriers that might potentially impede people from finding affordable housing. Is it bank lending practices? Is it zoning ordinances? What is it? And so we did want to guide you towards the Commission on Human Relations. They're the city agency department that works with fair housing. And there's the email address, and then documents are available in terms of filing fair housing complaints or issues. Those are available. So I want to just give you a quick timeline, like what are we talking about time-wise here? So since last month, roughly through February, there's going to be ongoing, or late January next year, ongoing community outreach. This is not the last of it. This is just one piece of the whole puzzle. And to get input, the survey will be available through roughly January 3rd. So, it'll be available for a while. The plan will be developed. Roughly in March, April, there's going to be a 30-day display period. So this document that's going to be created with your input will go on display for 30 days. It'll be online. It'll be hard copies, probably in a lot of libraries, the city. And that's an additional opportunity for feedback. We'll have public hearings at that time during that 30-day period. And then it gets submitted, council approves it, submission to HUD, review and approval. And as we mentioned, you might say, well, wait, this date is after these dates. Well, this is all based on when the federal government passes a budget. And we know it's coming up next year. It's an election year. So, the chances are that the timeline is just going to be way off. It was this past year. I don't think it was submitted, the document, until July of this past year. And the city didn't get funding until, I think, September. Way off track. It's been off, I think, since 2013 or so. So we're assuming that this is a kind of conservative estimate, but anyway, that's technically when the contract year begins, April 1st. So as I started out with, really what we're here to do is listen to you about what you see as the needs. We just give some suggestions: housing needs, economic development, public facilities, homelessness, community development, social services, better than I. And then we want to know what those needs are in your neighborhood, your respective neighborhood. Maybe wear a couple hats. Maybe you're a nonprofit representative and a resident, so however you want to tell us about those. And then finally, we just want to let you know that we are available for ongoing contact. Well, there's a link to the survey, and there's a printout of this slide on the table. And we have an email address, community.development@pittsburghpa.gov. So you can always email us, you can call us. We are live people that will answer the phone and talk to you, if you want to provide us with input or if you have questions. To be honest, we may not have answers to your questions tonight. Really, this is a needs hearing, so we want to hear the needs, and we're glad to try to provide you answers if we can, either tonight or a later date, but we will get back to you, and we can always make a little note on the sign-in sheet, has a question about housing programs or whatnot, but we're not going to try to answer all the questions necessarily right now. So I would just open it up to anyone who wants to. I'm powering it off. If anyone here wants to talk, I know there's a mic next to you if you want to, or.
No, what you guys say, everyone, other relations with you. Okay, come on. Okay,
Thanks.
It's not money a definite thing. I mean, because
It is.
needs the money. They need a lot of fixing up over here.
Ms. Smith, quick question.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry.
Talking about
It is.
A lot of Section 8 and landlords that don't take care of their properties.
yeah.
Right.
How can that be fixed? I mean, with these grants? I mean,
Yeah. Probably the biggest funding stream for those include both, well, demolition money, right, to demolish some of the structures that.
vacant houses are
Vacant.
these back streets.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really takes a lot to tear them down.
Right. It does. I mean. You know exactly, it's a very long process to get these older homes demolished that are vacant.
That money would cover it.
Well, so it goes to the city. They have to go through a process of making sure there's no title. They have to go through that process, possibly acquire it. It depends on the title and the ownership. And then if the city's able to acquire these for demolition, they have to go through a long process there too to make sure there are no underlying utilities or whatnot. But it's a long, lengthy process. But it's been done effectively in many areas of this city, to clear these sites for future development, for future housing that can really transform a neighborhood. And that's where some of these home monies can come in, because those monies can really be used for new housing construction. You can't use Cdbg for new housing, but you can use home funds for new housing. You can use Cdbg funds for housing rehabilitation. But I know the city's been emphasizing home ownership, and I think they're moving back into rental housing assistance a bit. But anyway, so the answer is yes, probably not at the levels that we'd like it to be.
Nothing is, right?
No, right?
Would this cover also, not the Sheridan, but also in Esplin too, the money?
I think yes. I mean, I don't know Espen that well, but
So what, if it's okay.
yeah.
So for demolition, that is on a sum and blight basis.
Yeah.
The city looks at what the urgent needs are, what the projects that are top of their list of safety issues. So that's what they use in the past. Cdbg
Like the
funds to help.
buildings that I just mentioned to you with that,
Yeah.
that need demolition with the grants, help us get that torn down.
So the city has an allocation that it uses for demolition and clearance, not every year, but most years. And so based off of their matrix of how they prioritize the properties, then that's what they use to demo the properties. Once they clear all of the items, as Whitney discussed, for the historic.
Would we see under priority since we've been turning this in for 9 years?
I'm not sure how the matrix is identified by the Unsafe Building Commission, but that is something that they have, and they give the priorities then to the city for the demos.
Yeah.
Are the buildings?
It's definitely a need, so we'll put that in there, that there's a need for
Yeah.
demolition of unsafe structures.
Right.
It is,
Now, are the buildings tagged? Somebody thought they might. Are they tagged?
they're connected together.
No.
I mean, is there a paper? Is there a?
Yes, the city put out a couple years ago.
Oh, a couple years.
Them a sign on it, on the 3 buildings and everything.
Well, it's been 3 years since those were
Yes,
put up.
so, but like I said, the man lives in New York and he's a millionaire, so he just keeps
Yeah.
paying the fine
Oh,
and nothing's done. And because he can't really do anything to him because he lives out of state.
I mean, if you call me and give me the addresses.
Mrs. Smith,
Oh, she
said to
does.
contact her office.
Okay.
And she would help us out.
Great. Yeah, I mean, she can definitely push the right people, to make that happen.
We've been turning it into 311 and the city and everything for 9 years and nothing's.
Right.
He said he's protected to legal things.
Yeah, I'd have to familiarize myself with the situation, but it can be a slow process. 9 years, that's really, that's bad.
Be on the waiting list by now.
Yeah,
For demolition, anyhow.
right. I mean, I know it can take a long time because the city has so many structures, on the demo list that they kind of prioritize them. And
Like I said, he said to call Humane since I've been, we were, a river rat
Oh.
ran out of the house.
oh,
And there's all kind of birds and everything.
Oh, wow.
Homeless people set up things in there, and we got rid of them. But
okay,
it's been like 9 years that we turned it in,
right.
and nothing's been done.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely, I mean, we'll definitely put it in the plan and it's possible.
I just wondered, because we're little, Aspen is we little, and up here they have a good community thing, but
Right.
I just wondered if we would be included in on it for demolition.
I mean, I would think so. I don't know why not.
It's in the city.
Yeah, as long as it's in the city.
It's in the city, it's right, it's on
Yeah.
Tabor Street.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's all about the matrix of the priorities when they come up with it.
But Teresa, she's real good with us, and
Good,
she said to contact her office. And
good. Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
if I live 9 more years, I might not be around because I'm 77.
yeah, I shouldn't have had to waited 9 years. That's for sure. But
But legally, he's protected. Like he said, he lives in New York, and he bought it's a duplex all
Okay.
connected. So you can't really go after him because he's paying the fines, but yet he's out of state, and I don't know
Oh.
why he bought the buildings.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the city's tried to tighten that up where, absentee landlords who do,
Yeah,
That-
they've torn down houses around our
Yeah.
area, like on Tabor Street.
right,
The landlords that live in there, they've done a good job, but him, he just keeps paying the fine, and we can't, and it looks like a war zone.
yeah, the problem is sometimes the fines are so low, it doesn't really hurt some of the people like that.
Would this money help, like, we have a lot of single parents around here, would that help them to maybe be able to buy their own homes so they could get out of that rut of renting and
Yes.
low-interest loans for single parents?
Yeah, I mean, the first-time homebuyer program through the Urban Redevelopment Authority and the Housing Opportunity Fund, they really come up with, the Urban Redevelopment Authority has really come up with some great products recently. Because there's now a housing trust fund that's been developed. So they've been trying to channel those monies into the Housing Opportunity Fund and all their host of programs. But actually, I think it was last month, I was here at, I forgot the name of the school up on the hill, right up,
Langley?
no, I don't think,
Here?
yeah, fairly close. There was a community event it was a Saturday.
Greenway.
Greenway, yeah. And Councilwoman Smith organized an event, and the Urban Redevelopment Authority was there. They had a table with all their programming. So I think she's going to try to do more of that. So that's the kind of thing to really get some of those single moms and people to come into, because
So would that money help them though?
the home monies, the 2.1 million, I think, goes to those programs, as well as the Housing Trust Fund money from the recent funding of that program.
Also, just if you know somebody who is interested, there is a link on the URA's website of the program, so that they can also look through there and find out more information on the program.
Justin is in, isn't it? I can't remember his last name. He's in that URA, isn't he? Justin
The name sounds familiar. I don't know all the people, but
Bear.
I think that's right, Justin Bear.
I think he's having a meeting here this month.
Is that right?
Or is it next month? I don't know. There's too many meetings coming up here, but
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a name on the site, but there is a down payment assistance program they
Okay.
offer.
Yeah.
There's a fact sheet too, so if someone is interested, they can kind of look through the fact sheet. Let me see if it has a number. Yeah, it has the number and what your income limit's gonna be.
okay.
What about people on Section 8? Would they be eligible for any help to buy a property or?
I mean, they have to be, yes, they have to be, it depends on their income level and so on, but there are programs to help to do down payment assistance for people, because sometimes, as you mentioned, it's more expensive to rent some of these units than even to buy. You know, if you include some of the subsidies and just down payment assistance and so on, you know, you can sometimes get these units for less.
In our neighborhood, there's a lot of Section 8 people that rent, and I understand, because I'm on Section 8.
Yeah.
I understand that there's a program that they'll help you buy a house.
Yep.
And if you're on a low income.
Right.
Justin Dalton.
The housing
That's it. I
authority.
knew it was Justin Dalton.
Housing authority.
It's right on their website.
Yeah.
So the housing authority offers that, a down payment assistance
Yep.
program with Section 8 vouchers.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can, you go through them, and I think sometimes you piggybacks onto their program.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I heard about it, but I don't know that much about it, you know. But I understand that they would help you. You know.
Yep. Yeah. So there are a lot of programs, and a lot of efforts to, you know, and I think the URA has been coming out and you know, doing outreach, like the one event that occurred last month that Councilwoman Smith organized, and then it sounds like somebody's coming from the URA next month. Or yeah.
And there's another question. A lot of our seniors, they've been complaining about Port Authority buses that cut routes and now, could some of that money go into Port Authority even though it's Allegheny County?
Yeah, I mean, it's not directly. I mean, some funding, like community development block grant funds, can be used for like a senior van, you know, program. I mean, definitely parks and recreation and senior vans, but
It's hard to get our vans. That's why we've been asking about Port Authority because
right.
there's only 2 vans in Parks and Recreation that we can use.
Oh, okay.
And then you have 13 centers and we have to put our bids in for the
Right.
vans.
I know Ross Chapman has mentioned, yeah, that's a real issue. That's a problem.
It is. And
Yeah.
sometimes if they get wrecked or they're out of service, then all the centers
Right.
suffer. And our seniors depend on that to go shopping or
Right.
lunch and learn to eat.
Yeah. Well, I don't know in the capital budget that just came out yesterday. You know, the transportation's a part of that, but frankly, I'd have to check. I don't know if the senior transportation part.
Instead of asking me to see.
But no, it's a lot of people have mentioned that too, so it's a big, important part. But I mean, generally for public services, senior services are a big part of the use of funding, Cdbg funds. I'd say across the country, a lot of senior programs are funded through Cdbg funding.
And they take advantage of it. I mean,
Yeah, that's good.
They really use
Deserve it. Yeah.
And they like coming out.
Yeah,
They
sure.
do that.
Social.
I just got elected on council for here my first time, and but Teresa, we wouldn't know what to do without her helping us.
Yeah, great.
You know, the seniors.
Yeah. Well, she seems very,
Like a godsend to us.
yeah, good. That's who you need. Yeah,
She works hard over this district. She really does.
that's great. Good to hear.
I think she should get a raise.
Well, I don't know if we can use this funding for that, but I think the city could do that.
Will there be any language in the plan that speaks to addressing poverty, alleviating poverty?
Yes. I mean, there's a big part of the plan that looks like needs, is based on the housing. Well, there's a lot of data that identifies, but inevitably, these plans show a lot of need, you know, in terms of need, like folks making 0 to 30, median household income. So obviously, big need category, or 30 to 50. And so it kind of slices it up according to the need by income category and by racial and ethnic categories. But yes.
Another question. How focused will you be in interacting with the faith community or the faith-based community?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah. How focused will you be on interacting with the faith-based community, churches, synagogues, et cetera?
Well, we've actively engaged with, I mean, we have a long contact list. We try to make sure that we get all notices out to churches and other organizations about these hearings and about the process that's going on currently. So there are no barriers to, people from places of faith participating or applying for funding, with certain federal guidelines. Was that your question? Okay. Are there any? No, some. Sure. There's a mic right there. And I have to say, this is really kind of a needs. Welcome to ask questions. I may or may not be able to answer them right now, but I can write them here, and we'll try to get back to you if we can. If it's something we can't answer right now.
I just have a quick statement on behalf of my organization. My name is Julia Pascal. I work for City of Bridges Community Land Trust. We're an affordable housing developer that develops community ownership and permanently affordable housing. Right now we're on track to develop 100 units of for-sale housing over the next 5 years. We've been really grateful and fortunate to receive support from both the URA and the Housing Opportunity Fund so far. And we really need that support to continue to address the affordable housing crisis in our city. The Housing Opportunity Fund was never intended to replace other city housing funding. And I would just, again, reiterate that we're grateful for the support we've received, and we need that support to continue, and we need the funding allocated from the city to stay where it has been, if not go up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm with an organization called the Aleph Institute. We provide programs and services to those leaving prison, re-entering society, becoming productive members of society. The ACLU a couple of months ago released the numbers that in Pennsylvania itself, there's 1 in 34 are either in prison or leaving prison or on probation and parole. And it's imperative that we provide programs and services. We have received funding from the Cdbg grants in the past, and we need these funding to be able to provide re-entry services, lead them to housing, lead them to other programs and services so they can become productive members of the community.
Thank you. I know there are a couple other people in the back. Do you want to speak or express needs? Sure.
My name's Cassandra Law. I'm with Presbyterian Senior Care Network. Primarily deal with affordable housing with the elderly. What I see a great need for is housing for those that are under 62 with either physical or mental disabilities. We've got a large amount of people who are waiting to be 62 to get into an elderly building, but they have nowhere to go. Their parents are aging, and they need supportive services, and there is definitely a lack of housing available to them. I'm not sure, you don't get a lot of funding, but it's an area that's in significant need. And it has to come with services. You can't just open a building and put a whole bunch of physically or mentally disabled people in them and expect them to do well, because they won't.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sure.
I did not get a chance to attend Mayor Peduto's budget presentation, but quite naturally, he factored community development block grant funds and these other sources of funding in his budget. Could you speak a little bit to that? And I also echo the sentiment of my colleagues here talked about affordable housing as well, especially for those who are in great need, those who are re-entering from incarceration and what have you.
Dave is the man to he could probably talk to you about the capital budget better than I probably could.
I'm Dave Hutchinson, the Assistant Director for Capital and Asset Management with the city. You're right, we just launched both our capital and operating budgets on Tuesday as part of the Mayor's State of the City address. Each of the funded deliverables for Cdbg are kind of mixed in the different pages of the budget by project. But if you're looking for kind of a quick summary of where all the CD funds are going, there's a project by department chart in the back that's 2 pages. And it's tough to see, but there's different departments and then there's different columns for funding. So there's actually a 2020 Cdbg column. If you want to get a quick summary for where the city's spending Cdbg dollars. As Whitney said, this year we got 13.8, but also we don't know what the exact funding is going to be for 2020. So we tried to be conservative and we budgeted 13.5 million. You'll also see HOPWA and ESG in this budget, but home's going to be with the URA's budget.
You asked the right person. Yes. Yep. So sorry, go ahead.
I didn't get a chance to attend the meeting at CCAC, 2 nights ago? And that's why I'm here this evening.
Oh, okay, great.
But what type of a turnout was there at that gathering?
Poor. I mean, we didn't have anyone from the public, so to speak. We had all the setups, so, yeah, we're sort of trying different avenues to explore. We actually have a live Facebook feed right now for people who can ask questions. We're just we're going out to meetings. Like I went to Larimer Consensus Group meeting so we're going to community groups to try to, not just be in a room downtown, but to get out to neighborhoods. So it's always a up and down battle to do that. And of course, that night, was a miserable night weather-wise, but yeah. I think next year we'll probably start earlier also, so we won't get into the weather issues, But the other thing is this is an ongoing process, so it doesn't, end with tonight or even next week. So we're always open to, talking to community groups. So
is it safe to assume that all these funds will be used just within the city of Pittsburgh and not Allegheny County?
Correct. These are strictly the city of Pittsburgh's funds, federal allocation. Yeah, the county also has its own pot of Cdbg, home, ESG, and HOPWA funds. I think they get HOPWA, but definitely Cdbg, home, and ESG. And actually, the city of Pittsburgh works with the county on ESG very closely to address homelessness, but yet each gets its own allocation of ESG funds.
And also, my name is Will Tompkins, and I work at the Northside Coalition for Fair Housing.
Oh, okay.
I did sign in as well.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so outreach is a group effort. On the handout, or one of the handouts, there's a link to the SurveyMonkey survey that we're trying to solicit information from. Honestly, the best outreach and input we've gotten is when somebody takes this kind of a survey back to their community group, back to their monthly meeting or back to their workplace, and hands it out. We do what we can in terms of email and social media, and we have some really great lists from Office of Community Affairs, from Molly and Hirsch, to help us do some outreach. But honestly, it's people kind of one-on-one and word of mouth that tends to get us the best results. So anything you can do to help spread the word when it comes to filling out the SurveyMonkey link, that would be a huge help.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And also, just as a promo, next week we do have a meeting at the Kingsley Association on the 19th, and on the 20th we're going to be at the Carnegie Library in Carrick. So those are 2 coming up. Is there anything else, any other issues people want to mention or discuss? No.
It's also safe to assume that all the funding will be expended, none will be returned to federal government. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's a good point. We try to make sure that these funds are tightly managed and so they're expended properly and go right to the need. We're really, I think everyone, and this office, and well, just, we're all residents. We all live in the city, so we want to see the best things happen and to utilize these funds as best they can to reach the people that need the assistance. Right, so we're the ones that see people on the buses, on the streets, and it's really, it's not a lot of funding, but it's something, right, to assist some of these groups. So we're all about making sure that these funds get out there quickly and properly, and that they're spent properly. So yeah, that's a key part.
Can you apply any time, or is there a funding cycle, and how long does it take from the date of application to approval or denial?
That's a great question, because we're anticipating that in January, and we can make a note on the sign-in sheet to let everyone know who signed in. We anticipate that in January we'll have a workshop, probably maybe here, not quite sure yet, to talk about the application process and what projects might qualify for funding, to give people some basically technical assistance in terms of how to apply. And we're also anticipating, well, it's going to happen, we're going to have an online application form that'll be available on our website. In the past, it's been paper. We're trying to update it. So, but we don't know when that's going to go online. We think probably February is our guess. But so January, a workshop, and February funding, or the application should be available online. Though we're trying to move in that direction, I do want to make it clear that we do have hard copies of the survey in the back table. So if you have, the folks, we can't assume everyone has a laptop or computer or whatnot. And so, we can certainly send these surveys to people as well, hard copies. We have them available. And so we'll probably have the application primarily online, but we'll have some hard copies too. We don't want to exclude people. We're just trying to make the process easier. No, it'll probably be, I'm not sure how long the window will be. I'm assuming maybe a month, possibly, maybe from February. Again, I'm ballparking at February 1st to February 28th. The application will be open. Maybe not quite that long, probably a couple weeks. And the workshop will be of value because, like a lot of all federal funding, there's some very strict guidelines in terms of how the funding is supposed to be utilized. And so we'll help to provide the technical assistance on how to submit an application that qualifies. Yeah, but we do welcome you to attend once that is set. Well, I appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and we're available ongoing. It's not the end.
Okay, so my name is Pamela Benson, and I live in the Hill District on Bedford Avenue. And some of the things that are happening, because I have a choice voucher. So the choice voucher seems to be different from affordable housing or low income housing. And so the choice voucher, we're just about down in poverty now with the housing, because where I live at now, you can consider that blighted. And so I'm having a hard time on where can I go other than, plus I'm a senior and disabled. I have a disability. So those things like the new places, Bedford Hill, oh boy, they look so beautiful. But I can't get them. So I want to know, how do I tap in to get some of the new, they got the Middle Hill coming up. And that doesn't seem to be for me. So I'm in trouble. And also what I'm finding out too is that a lot of the hospitals are really partnershiping with maybe McCormick and Barron and them. And so the people coming out of the Manor Cares and stuff like that are getting those places like on Dinwiddie and all that. And so it just gives me less of a hope to what happens to me, because I've been displaced about 3 times already, from Lawrenceville to Blackstreet, and now I'm in the Hill District. So I guess next I might be homeless. That's my fear.
Okay, thank you. What we'd like to do with the sign-in sheet is, we can follow up with you. We're not going to have the answers right now, but if you want to maybe put an asterisk next to your name, we will call and email you. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, I can give you the mic. I just don't know if it'll.
My name is Betty Lane, and I live in Larmer here. I'm a Larmer resident for 48 years, okay? And I do have some questions around, okay, one of the things that you had up there was an emergency solutions grant. What is that? And explain that a little bit better to me. That's one of the questions. The other question was, one of the categories was to maintain decent housing. Now, that covers a whole gamut of things. So, it's specific there. And the third thing is, there needs to be some outreach to these landlords in some kind of way, okay? Because there is a lot of slum landlords. Some of them say they get no assistance from the city in terms of their properties and that. So something needs to be included, and I don't know how, but it should be included to include these landlords in some of it.
So, my name is Liz, and I can speak to the Emergency Solutions Grant part of your question. This sounds very loud. Is it really loud? No? Okay. The Emergency Solutions Grant funds are specifically for persons who are homeless or at imminent risk of being homeless, so they have a 10-day notice to leave their rental unit. They are administered through the city, but also we are partnered with the Department of Human Services. Persons that need assistance can call a centralized call center to get assistance. The funds can be used to support emergency shelters. They can be used to support programs that will help people to stay in their apartments or to get back into apartments quickly. And they can be used for street outreach services. So does that kind of answer your question?
Can I clarify, you say whether an individual can't apply?
An individual can't apply directly to the city. If an individual needed assistance, they would contact the Allegheny link if they needed help. Yes, is that, yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's a very good question and with a hard answer. I mean, decent housing, as you said, is very general. What does that really mean? Within the document, the 5-year consolidated plan, there's a very in-depth housing market study. Okay, and it looks at all the ones that I've looked at show that there's not enough decent, affordable housing, right, to meet all the needs within a community. And I'm sure that's what this is going to show. It looks at affordability by race, by age, by gender, income level, and inevitably those studies, I've done them in other areas, they show a wide gap. There's not enough affordable housing for persons, particularly of 0 to 30% of median household income, but all the way up to 80 anymore. It's getting very difficult. And there was an affordable housing study done in Pittsburgh 3-4 years ago, that showed that we needed at least, I think it was 17,000 units of affordable housing. I think it was annually that needed to be built. I mean, it's a huge gap, So I don't have the answer for that for decent housing, except to say that they're trying to set a bar to say, these funds should be used to provide decent housing that are livable and affordable. And, we're not reaching that bar, but I think that was the intent of it. Right. I know that in part that the city has an affordable housing task force, but also it's the vacant property working group in part, but that's of course for vacant properties. In terms of landlords, I don't have any quick answers for you. I'd have to kind of do some research for you and get back to you on that, Betty. But it is a difficult ongoing issue and problem.
Yes, my name is Donna Jackson, Chair of the Alarm Consensus Group. I just want to follow up behind Mrs. Lane. As we promote and do new housing, and I look at this goal description of housing construction, and as she stated, landlords is a big problem. We do have a lot of slum landlords, and one of the things for me engaging, because I'm the housing advocate for the neighborhood, and what they say to me is, well, we would do better if we had some assistance. And my thing was, what kind of assistance is what Betty's asking, that we can help to get rid of those slum landlords so we can rehab so they could pay a decent rent. Because what happens is these people are paying $700 and $800 and the landlord doesn't pay the water bill, then they're without water. Roaches, rats, they just don't take care of their property. So as we're developing, this neighborhood as a green neighborhood and trying to change the projection of what it looks like, it is important, it is important that we engage the landlords. And even through these goals and descriptions, there's nowhere there I see that you even incorporate landlords. Because let's figure, it's all over the whole city. It's just not Larmer, it's Homewood. We just had the big HUD incident where we had how many people displaced in Homewood, so there is a problem, and I think there needs to be something, goal description of how they can assist landlords. Because with this problem I'm seeing, it says home occupied. Well, some people move out of their houses and move into apartments, and they rent their houses out. So I just like to see that. And my last question will be, as a neighborhood, we have been trying to do a shelter type location in case of flood or whatever, and we've had difficulties. So if we could get information on how we go about that, it would be appreciated.
Sure, because I think that was a discussion before, right, about the hazard mitigation. Yeah, and I actually contacted the county hazard mitigation office. So I've got your phone number and email. So as soon as I find out, you'll be the first.
That's really important because you see the floods and different things that are happening, and just where was it? West End somewhere where they were out water and things like that. So there has to be some kind of communication link, because I was listening to some of these people were saying, we didn't even know there was a buffalo, but they didn't have water for 2 and 3 days. This does not make sense. There needs to be a better communication throughout the city. We got the internet. You know what I'm saying? So what's going on? Right. There's some links that are not being used.
Yep. Yeah, there is in the consolidated plan, there's a section on hazard mitigation, so we're gonna talk about that in there. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, so where I live at on Bedford Avenue is right across from the Bedford Hill Management Office. It's a blighted place, and I think that my landlord lives in Portland, Oregon. And he has a property manager that's like this. We're already protesting against them. But I think he's trying to get McCormick or Barron or Trek or one of them to develop, to buy that and develop it and whatever. So I'm there, and I don't know what my next move is other than to move. But with the choice voucher, it's going to take me, I don't know where. I just don't know. But I know that senior housing is, it's a little better and there's more of it. So I'm glad I'll be 62 next month, and maybe I can start there. But I want to stay in the city, and it just seems like people like myself is being edged out and edged out. And what I can't understand is no longer is my money green. It must be another color because it doesn't spend. They don't want to spend money on low-income housing, money on housing. We had choice vouchers from developers, and when I found out, they're only good for like 15 years or whatever and ever, so I'm not protected. And I just feel so bad because I love this city so much, and it just seems like there could be more done for us. You know, even in the Hill District, I'm looking at that affordable housing. If you don't have a job, you're not getting one. That's just the bottom line. Okay, if you're not a senior, 2 people coming in with just a studio or 1 bedroom, you're not getting it. And so I'm saying, don't we have enough room for everyone? That's what I want the city to look like, that everyone that lives here is comfortable. That's when we're strong, when you're most poorest and impoverished is happy. That's when the country's strong. And that's what I want to see.
Thank you. Anybody else want to touch on some quiet voices? Quiet people? Sure.
I was looking at these questions here on this confidential resident questionnaire, and it asks about blighted property and vacant lots, and are there any programs or services that are missing or underfunded in the city? And one is, City Sources apparently is your program that is supposed to deal with vacant lots, but we have over 700 vacant lots in Larimer by itself.
Right.
So we had been trying to advocate for a person who has the contract with URA right now to do the URA lots. We have been trying to advocate with the city to have him do those lots in Larimer because City Sources is really not able to do all of the lots in the whole city. And it ends up, I'm over the vacant Red Up project under the Larimer Consensus Group. So I am responsible for dealing with vacant lots, work with the city all the time, City Sources and all of these people. And one of the things that you get is that you get transferred to this person. Well, we don't do that no more. You have to contact the finance department because they're over there. And then it's like we need some real on the ground, realistic people in terms of how, I know that that's a large job and that one company cannot do the whole city of Pittsburgh. So there needs to be a real serious look at where vacant lots are, who can accommodate what, because that leads to rodents and all kinds of other problems, debris and everything in the neighborhood. So that is an area that needs to be looked at. And another one along with that is these inspectors that come around, and I deal with all of that stuff because I'm on vacant. The inspectors that are supposed to come and inspect vacant property and stuff. I can take you to a house that's been vacant for over 10 years, okay? And I have contacted this inspector numerous times. And I don't know what the problem is, that nobody can seem to do anything. It's a hazard. It could be set on fire. It's vacant. It's been falling apart. And nothing happens. That's just one incident of what happens, in dealing with and trying to get a beautiful city that everybody wants to live in.
Right. Very good comments. Thank you. We are recording it, and also please put on the survey. But I have your email and phone number, so I will follow up. Believe me. Yeah, we will follow up. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to just riddle. I don't want to shortchange an answer. I don't want to just rattle one off. That's what I'm trying to say. But we'll find out.
Did you see anything coming down the pipe?
I don't want to be negative. It's very incremental. That's not a very exciting way to look at it. But I think there are people with the city and the Urban Redevelopment Authority, they're trying to make improvements, trying to expand the number of affordable housing units, and to clean up some of these lots. And demolish some of the units, but there's frankly never enough money or time, resources to make these things go. And, so I think that's the best. I think this city has a lot going for it in terms of a strong foundation community, which it can help to, they've actually supported a lot of affordable housing in the past, so we have a lot of positives, but it's definitely a major problem.
You have to pardon my sleep deprivation because I have a newborn, so I might not be the most coherent in my thoughts. But I'm going to try to echo my neighbors in some of these thoughts about blight and try to offer my perspective. It's maybe a slightly unique perspective because I'm not a native resident.
Where you live.
Oh,
What your name is? Sorry.
I live in Lincoln. My name is Gary Prunty. My wife and I bought a house from the son of a deceased gentleman about a year and a half ago. We were really struggling with, even though we were like teetering right around the poverty line, we were really struggling with economic insecurity, especially trying to have a child. Maybe like 3 years ago this time, we had looked at a lot of rent in like the Friendship area and the Bloomfield area, and found that even if those rents are $1,200 a month, which, I mean, we were right around the poverty line, but we'd had a couple roommates and we were using that. Even at that point, they wanted like 6 months rent up front, and it was really hard. Even with, I no longer consider myself poor, even though I've been on assistance a majority of my life, to be honest. But so we decided to try to look for like a really affordable housing option in maybe like what the city of Pittsburgh would call a more struggling economically neighborhood, and Lincoln qualified for that. So we found a house. Lincoln Leamington. It's right uphill. So we spent a long time kind of struggling with finding a house that we could afford, because we wanted to buy a house to alleviate some of this economic insecurity when it comes to rent that I'm sure a lot of my neighbors experience. So we found a house that we could afford, and we kind of had some non-conventional loan methods to get this house, which was a struggle in itself, because like a lot of the houses that were affordable for us weren't actually available through like kind of typical like mortgage means. But we finally found a house that was affordable, and even though it had been vacant for a couple of years, we found that we had the flexibility with our rent situation and living with roommates and being pretty frugal to buy this house and kind of work on it and get it to a point where we could live in it and support a child in it. And through this, we kind of learned a lot through the home buying process, and like through meeting our neighbors and learning through our neighbors like what that entails for a lot of our other neighbors that had been in the community for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And I know that I'm speaking to like maybe a smaller segment of the population, because maybe not the most typical route of home ownership in Lincoln Leamington for sure. But I also I see these problems of blight, and I have done enough studies of kind of urban decay to understand like where we are in the process in Pittsburgh. And I think that maybe something similar to my process is a way that you can empower people to be homeowners. And I think that some of the major roadblocks that I come into is, like I said, that loan program for having a way to purchase a home that is affordable. Because I'm sure me and a lot of my neighbors don't see the homes that were in Highland Park, which we were living in before, for $300,000. Like that doesn't seem affordable to me, and I really don't want to be paying for a home for 60 years. I also found a lot of roadblocks in the home that I bought in Lincoln. There were 3 vacant lots that had been vacant and tax delinquent for at least 25 years. I bought this house 2 years ago. I'm still very much in the middle of the process of getting those lots through the city, even though I commend the city's side lot program. I think that makes it a lot easier to kind of get homeowners responsible for those lots. I think that I probably have a little more tools than the typical homeowner in Lincoln Leamington, or even in the city of Pittsburgh, on how to negotiate that. So I think that when it comes to blight and like how to deal with those blighted properties, like some sort of task force to help people and empower people to like take ownership of those lots. Yeah.
I'm just curious, I think the answer is no, but did you look at any of the programs offered by the URA or the city, or?
No.
Okay.
And to be honest, I admit that kind of cowboy the process and looking for ways. I'm not exactly as receptive to some of those assistance things because I want to do it myself. But it just going through that process has made me think through some of that. And I know, I mean, maybe I didn't do my due diligence in looking through some of those assistance that you're referring to, but I'm sure that if I didn't see it, other people didn't see it. So I think that, you know, educating people on how to get through that process would be beneficial. And I'm not sure if that applies to any of these funding methods, but just like an advocate for I don't know if that can apply to some of that funding, but I think it'd be really helpful for me and my neighbors because I've heard that echoed with a lot of my neighbors too.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point.
Credit score is higher than 680 now, up to 700. So that's one of the roadblocks. And in the city of Pittsburgh, you can't even rent a house. They are up for sale. And so the people that are seniors or maybe at that age where a 30-year mortgage is just not foreseeable, like myself, I'm on a fixed income and things of that nature. And so the city has blocked everything other than if you're making, like, to live in this city, it seems like you have to make like 50 to 70,000 just for the studio. So it's very difficult. Home ownership, like I said, you can't rent a house. Try to rent a house in Pittsburgh. And it's like a block out. It's a shutout. And we're asking Pittsburgh strong, Pittsburgh this and that, but it's just not that way. So that's where we need to start on getting some people. You have HFA or Pennsylvania Housing that can have some of those programs. I know they could be done because we done Garfield Glen. There was 51 homes, and we brought people in from Garfield because I'm at Garfield Jubilee Association. And we brought them in, got them their credit scores up, and they were able to be homeowners. But now, property tax went up, and they're struggling to get out. So those are some of the things that we can look at as a city to try to prevent those types of things from happening, whether it's the buyback or the community buybacks, their own place, or however it goes. We should be like more creative. Just to slap some buildings up and there goes Google, or there goes Children's Hospital. They changed the property value. So now you got UPMC coming to the Hill District, boom.
Oh, we appreciate it. We have, sorry, did you want to speak? I'm sorry. Yeah.
You can let her speak.
Okay.
Yeah, I can ask that. Is this book available? Because, I mean, there's some things that I'd like to take a look at.
Is that I think that's the 2019
This is the
plan.
2019 one. Sorry. Oh,
Okay. So that
this is online?
available online.
It is? Okay.
And that's the current year that we're in. Yeah. It's the annual action plan. So that was part of the 2015-2019 5-year cycle. That's the last year of the plan, and then this will be the first. It's available on the website, and we can send you the link on the sign-in sheet. We'll make a note. Sorry, ma'am, did you had a comment? Or no?
No, well, I was.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I just had a question here on the housing needs. Obviously, the housing needs are incredible in a number of different neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. So my question is how do you prioritize? How do you prioritize? The housing needs are, the Hill and Homewood and Larimer and, all these different places that have tremendous housing needs. And so I just want to know how you prioritize.
I can tell you briefly my understanding about the way people want to try to get it prioritized, which is to look at what's called areas of opportunity, so that funds don't go towards areas necessarily where people have a difficult time getting transportation, or schools are far away, or so that they're clustered closer to viable areas, places with grocery stores and bus transportation and schools, so that they're not isolated as they were in the past. The funding patterns tended to be to segregate people, right? Affordable housing over here, people over here, kind of segmentation. I think the goal has been, and without getting into politics, the funding stream has changed a bit, but the emphasis has been to try to get the funding, affordable housing funding, focused more on, to use an overused term, areas of opportunity, right? So that it's not funding that's just kind of thrown in different areas of the city, but it's actually thought through, so that there are developments that occur in viable neighborhoods.
So when you say areas of opportunity, are those areas that they plan on developing, or are they areas that already exist? And I'm thinking about the Run right now, where they're trying to declare it an area of opportunity and they want to put a road through there and screw up the neighborhood and stuff. So I'm trying to understand what you mean when you say area of opportunity.
To be honest, I don't know the issues around that specific example, but I can't say that the attempt has been to not reinforce negative funding in terms of, funding activity, housing developments that are in remote areas of the city, so that people are, stuck in areas without having the ability to get to a bus stop or just a decent school.
Okay.
I mean, that's very general, but
Right. So those people are stuck, and yeah.
Was the pattern in the past? Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But I think the attempt is to try to pivot that funding to make sure that it doesn't, reinforce some of those negative patterns.
When you talk about, looking at what this young lady was saying, is when I look at the neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, I look at what investments have already been made in certain neighborhoods. And certain neighborhoods have been totally neglected. I've lived in Larmer for 48 years, and this $30 million was the first major investment that came to this neighborhood in 48 years. Homewood had got money, Garfield had got money, everybody else had gotten money, investment money. We had gotten any. So therefore, to me, it's like when you look at the city overall and you look at neighborhoods that have been totally neglected for years, look like that would be one of your priorities in terms of investing and doing some investment.
Yes, exactly.
So $30 million mean nothing in 48 years when you did nothing, and no services or anything, no investment. Come on now.
Right. Is it rebuttal? Okay.
Hello, my name is Dana Fowler. I'm from the Lincoln-Leamington area, and I'm part of the Lincoln-Leamington Community Consensus Group. To speak to the gentleman who moved in Lincoln about our group, we just went after a grant to help people in the Lincoln-Leamington area that might need things to cut their grass, their hedges, things of that sort to keep the neighborhood intact. And we have been trying to tackle a lot of the vacant lots, whether private or non-private. I came back to Pittsburgh in 1994. I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University with a degree in architectural science and construction science and management. I worked in Chicago doing city model blocks. That means you have money that comes in and redoes sidewalks over, handicap and all type of things all over the city of Chicago. I have never seen that here in the city of Pittsburgh. When I first came home, I lived where the Paulson Park is, and I used to, when I was younger, could go and look at the fireworks, and I went down, almost killed myself because it was a trench on the city's property, not the people. And for some crazy reason, it got turned around. I got sent to court, housing court, that my aunt worked hard to put into operation, and I got sent to housing court for my sidewalk. But the sidewalk was what is called like war sidewalks during World War II, most likely. And it was never, ever y'all have never come back Like Miss Betty, I've been in Lincoln Leamington for 51 years, since I was a little girl when my parents bought their house. I'm still there in their house. You all have never invested in any sidewalks in our neighborhood, in the Lincoln Leamington area at all. I don't understand that. And your road work is just horrendous. I was a resident engineer for the city of Chicago, redoing roads properly, you know, taking everything out, putting in a new sub-base, new PCC 9-inch, 6.1 concrete strength, and then 2 levels of, you know, roads, you know, the bituminous course and the fancy course on top. But I don't see that happening. All I see is continuously throwing asphalt on top of bad foundation. And I don't understand, as this is a viable city, why aren't we doing our infrastructure 10 times better than the way it is? It's embarrassing when I have people come in from out of town and all they can say is we have the worst city streets they've ever rode on in their life. We're getting better. I'm not taking that away from the city, because now the potholes are done much better with a sealant around it. But even though they're doing that, I think y'all should really, there's federal funding, highway and safety. That's how Chicago did it. And I don't understand, what are y'all doing down there? That's just my personal question. And one other thing about I still think redlining is going on as well in our neighborhoods. I just went for a loan in February. I couldn't get it until May. I had a 7-point-something score. The man kept saying, you really pay all your bills? I'm like, yes. I thought that's what we live to do, is to pay our bills. And I still had a hard time getting a loan. But I don't know, the gentleman that was here he went through a non-conditional, and I looked at, there's one last issue, because I am part of the watershed task force. And so last year there was all this rain that came to the city. It caused a lot of mold and mildew damage to a lot of people's homes. And I don't understand why the city is not out telling people or helping people to remediate this mold and mildew. That's why I was getting a loan, to remediate my mold and mildew that never happened in that house until last year, with that oversaturation of water throughout our system. And these are problems that are happening to everyone. It's not just in my neighborhood. I'm finding out it's happening everywhere throughout the Pennsylvania area. So I think you all should look at those issues too, to help people, because some people stay silent about it because they feel embarrassed, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's water just saturating through your foundation because we had overabundance. And how do you help? There should be an emergency fund. I heard what you said is for when you got 10 days and you're getting kicked out. Well, what about homeowners that have a home and they have an emergency? That's not on the URA list. And the URA loan has what they want you to do, and you have to use their contractors. And I guess because I'm a little bit more educated, I might not feel comfortable with that and what they want me to do. Like a sidewalk, and I need a sidewalk on my house property. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just, that's my opinion. That's what I'm speaking about.
My name is, I'm going to step back here so I'm not standing over top of you. My name is David Hutchinson. I'm the Assistant Director for Capital and Asset Management with the City of Pittsburgh. What you're describing is common. We have huge issues with sidewalks in a lot of neighborhoods. They've been historically underfunded. The best way to get things fixed, unfortunately, is through 311. I actually know Betty's name through an email chain on a set of stairs. So keep raising hell, that's important. But it's also the best. Response times can really vary. It's not the most. Okay, we'll get your contact information and follow up with that. Yeah, Betty's pretty good at it. And your assessment of paving is completely true. We've been underfunded for paving for decades. Our paving program should be about $25 million a year. This year in the proposed 2020 budget, we have right around $17 million. That's the second biggest year we've ever had. The first biggest year was last year, which was 18 million, and then before that it was single digits in the millions for a number of years. We had a prior administration that was just doing the top 1.5 inches of wearing and not even touching the 2.5 binding, so completely true on those accounts. We're trying to play catch up. There's a number of things with capital that we have limited resources. We're trying to make tough decisions, and I think public infrastructure investments are a great way to stabilize neighborhoods, to keep people in a space that is livable, decent, affordable housing, access to transit. So those are all really important considerations that we take into account when we get proposals for the capital budget.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, but it's a good point about the weather changes, and not to get into the whole, whatever your political stance is on it, global warming, but what's I think happening, and this is more my personal opinion, is that sometimes policies lag what people really need, right? So people need this, but nothing, it takes like a couple years for programs to catch up, and I think there's still catch up going on in terms of programs, say from the URA, I'm just using them as an example, to address some of those real issues of people, mold and mildew in people's homes. I mean, that's going to be an increasing problem. I know my own neighbors, I live not far away, have that problem. Right, so it's not going away, and I think it'll get to the point where they're going to have to specify that in their programs. The emergency housing, they do have some funding for emergency housing rehab, but yeah, they tend to be old school, sort of the list that they have, and that's going to change, I'm sure. I think people being very loud and vocal and making demands on the system to say that's a nice program, but it's not meeting the needs of what we're having out, going on really in our lives, in people's homes and neighborhoods. And I think there have been changes and updates. I'm not to promote the city programs of the URA, but there is a housing opportunity fund. There's been the development of the housing trust fund. So there's real efforts, I think, to try to begin to address some of these issues that have been brought up. But there's never enough money or resources, but I think that things are kind of pushing in that direction to happen, but it's slow, a slow pivot that just takes people's engagement. So I would strongly encourage you all to continue to be engaged and to push us to, and this isn't the last of this process, as I mentioned, there's the survey, people do pay attention to it, please complete it, please tell your friends about it. We will get back to you. We're not people that are just going to say, thanks for your email, see ya, but we'll get back, we'll be in contact. But also, this is an ongoing process, as was mentioned. This will be on display, we'll have another public hearing. So please stay engaged in the process. If there are any other, sorry.
Could you describe what economic development needs includes?
Well, so the federal funds, CDBG funds, can be used for economic development efforts. It could be for job creation. It could be, say for a kitchen in a neighborhood to train people how to cook, or whatever it might be. It could be a small business loan in an area that's low, moderate income. So it can really be a wide range of economic development activities. But this is just to understand the needs. People say, well, we don't have a grocery store, right? The Hill District for a long time said that, and happening again. But, is there a food desert situation going on? That's the kind of issue.
I would just like to know, what about for people who are willing to go out and do things on their own? Say someone has a mold and mildew problem and they have the facility to help relieve that problem. Does the city see any possibility of maybe being able to reimburse
those people or support those people somehow.
Did you say multimodal? I'm sorry to know.
More,
Yeah,
yeah, that just as an example.
I mean, there are programs through the Urban Redevelopment Authority for housing rehab. You have to be income qualified, usually, lower income. So that's probably the best avenue for that kind of.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is if someone just has an idea that they're going to go out and if the city isn't viable and able to solve a problem, but they can, will the city then do any work with that person to reimburse them or hire them, or, I mean, just to take up some of the shortfall?
Yeah, I don't know if directly the city can do that. I think in the example of a program that you feel is needed, I mean, you can work through your political channels, through your council member also to try to push them, because there are council members who are on the Urban Redevelopment Authority board. So that's one other avenue to, really push the process.
I do have a question that I hope you can answer. That IA funding, now does that, most of that go to the Commission on Human Relations? Is it about legal help for those who feel discriminated against, or where does that go, generally speaking?
So CDBG funds are used for the department, I believe. I don't know the extent of funding, but so federal community development block grant funds are used for that department to fight discrimination. Is that
the IA funding? Where does that go?
That's not. So it's that's not.
Sorry.
In his list,
Yeah.
He has sources and he had it on the bottom, but the AI is
it's
meant
not
as
really a funding.
a planning document to see what barriers are there.
Right. So
but he had CDBG home.
Right, it's a compendium. It's supposed to inform all the rest of the documents, the 4 programs, in terms of how those barriers could be removed to increase affordable housing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. But thanks. Good question. The goal is to try to. We have a number of people here who might want to provide input and on the needs in the communities, your community, and I know some people might have to leave. So anyway, whoever wants to start, feel free to raise your hand. And
my name is Raymond Moore. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator at the Fair Housing Partnership of Greater Pittsburgh. Actually not a question, just more of a statement from us. To touch on the topic that we're all acutely aware of, and to be blunt, the recently released report, Pittsburgh's Inequality Across Gender and Race, underscores our message. It bears repeating that Pittsburgh's racial segregation negatively impacts Black Pittsburgh so severely that if Black Pittsburghers simply move out of the city, their quality of life improves. Now more than ever, the City of Pittsburgh's CDBG expenditures must be held accountable to address the racial inequalities that have resulted in the City of Pittsburgh's lack of Black middle class and quality of life for Black population in Pittsburgh, PA, that's so poor as to result in an exodus of Black population from the city to Allegheny County. CDBG accountability requires a transparent process that shows residents that CDBG funding is in no way replacing general funds that are allocated as per its purpose to strengthen impoverished Pittsburgh. Additionally, the transparency must show that CDBG funding allocations include a comprehensive review of how the funding decisions will impact the city's documented racial segregation, as well as the impact on other protected classes. The city cannot fix what it doesn't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think just quickly, we're trying to make the process as transparent as possible. We've revamped our website. We're trying to get the applications online. We're trying to make it as clear and transparent as possible in terms of how the funding is done and the process for that and public input, and so it's an ongoing process. But yes.
My name is Shayla Collins, and I'm a disability advocate for the Center for Independent Living, known as Disability Options Network. We support Allegheny County consumers, and many times that includes assisting with housing needs. Often, we work alongside consumers to help them find suitable housing that is accessible based on their disability and also affordable based on limited income. As an example, if you live on supplemental security income, you receive a maximum of $793 per month. If we follow the recommended debt ratio for housing, which means no more than 30 to 40% of your income goes towards housing expenses, we are seeking out suitable housing that would cost between $240 and to $318 per month with basic utilities included. Tell me where we can find suitable housing at that cost, and you will quickly realize that we are talking about subsidized housing. From experience, I can tell you that in the city of Pittsburgh, the need is vastly greater than the available units. There are wait lists that are sometimes years long. Even when a person does get to the top of the list for affordable housing, they often find subsidized housing units are in less than desirable neighborhoods with fewer buses, higher crime rates, less access to affordable food, fresh foods, less access to jobs, and less access to community amenities like libraries, parks, and recreation. I've seen this time and again in the past 18 months as I have struggled alongside consumers to help them with housing. Some of them are in desperate situation, just days from eviction by a private landlord that decided to double or triple their rent because the neighborhood market would bear that higher rent, or living on someone's couch or the street when they suddenly find themselves homeless because they are unable to afford rent alone without the roommate who shared the costs in the past. Escaping domestic violence and trying to start over with limited resources and no ability to pay both rent and security deposit in the same month. These situations and more, buildings being sold and the people who lived there for years receiving a month's notice to find a new place, put together first and last month's rent, along with moving expenses. And when you include the time factor involved with background checks, inspections, and sometimes even occupancy permits for some of these subsidized units, you might begin to understand how desperate the situation truly is. Indeed, waiting lists for accessible housing in the areas of the city that have all the amenities for decent living can be as long as 10 years. I have worked with consumers that, despite their disability of cognitive challenges, had to complete mounds of application paperwork and jump through hoops just to be deemed suitable to wait for months for a unit to become available. We need to think strategically about changing this narrative. We need to consider that every development in the city be inclusive for all, not just developers who apply for subsidies, and that everyone has access to choose those options, even if it means they need some financial assistance from a social support system to have that access. We need to stretch funds to do the most good, and that is not in high administrative fees attached to grants. We need to encourage private landlords to make improvements and incentivize them when they make all-inclusive improvements, so when people find comfortable housing, they can age in place or guarantee that those with disabilities are welcome. If we really want Pittsburgh to live up to the nickname, the most livable city, we need to be socially conscious and welcome all people, remembering that disability is not always visible and not always physical, but it is a natural part of the human experience.
Hello, I'm Sherry Miller-Brown, and I'm the president of the Carrick Community Council. And I'm going to talk about something a little different. We in Carrick have, if you look at the hilltop, our community has approximately 3 times the size of all the other hilltop communities. One of the things that we've been paying attention to, of course, is the community development, housing, and whatever. I have here a list of 192 streets in Carrick. Before we can make, an idea of what kind of housing we can get or improve housing or everything, we need to do an analysis of each street. How many abandoned houses do we have? How many three-way houses do we have? What are some of the needs of people that are living in the community that could use some help with with rebuilding their house or improving their property. What we need is something that goes before, we start asking for the monies. We need to know what we have and what we need. I think it's a very serious problem. For example, we have a lot of abandoned homes here. So, we need to do a needs assessment. Okay?
How many residents do we have here?
Oh, here's the other. We have 10,000 residents in Carrick, which is, again, twice the size of the other neighborhoods. So, I think if we...
Are you from here originally?
I beg your pardon?
Did you grow up here in Carrick? I'm just curious about the population.
Yeah. I'm the 6th generation of my family to live in Carrick, so yeah, I grew up here, and so did everybody else. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm getting at, I'm assuming the population is probably half of what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
I don't, I can't answer that. I don't know that. One of the things that really surprises me when we look out at, just doing a tour of the community is how many homes have been abandoned. Or the other thing is, I think another problem we have that people don't talk about is, at one time, 200 years ago, Carrick was a millionaire's row. There's a great wealth in Carrick and whatever. So a lot of the property, a lot of the homes that we have are really, really big, and they're really, really well built. Okay, so what that means is what landlords and people that want to open up like halfway houses or three-way houses, they can come into Carrick and they can buy one of these big old houses, and whether they have permits to do it or not, they can put 18 bedrooms in there. Because they're big and they're well built, and it's not going to. So that's another problem that we have with the addiction and things like that. So what I'm saying is, before we can really do, like, we want to get Cdbg money and some of these other grants, but we really need to know what we have. We don't know what we have, and I think funding to help us do that would be really substantial.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know that just in terms of the streets, that I guess. My understanding is that the funding for the streets is actually quite the second highest this year than it's been in a number of years. I guess last year, the first year was the highest. It's now 22 million, but previously it was 17. I have my numbers wrong. You mentioned it last night at a meeting because this issue has come up. Sorry, for the street improvements, because didn't you mention that at the beginning? Streets, that's it, streets.
Yeah, yes, it's street improvements.
One piece of the whole, yeah.
What we have, what needs
sure.
improved.
Right.
And worked on.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry, I don't want to be talking too much, but so in terms of community development block grants, two questions. Is there a minimum for a project, a given project? Is there a minimum amount that needs to have for a project to be funded? And do you have examples of sidewalks improvements that you could talk about in the past that perhaps were funded through community development block grants? Or is that not typically what's funded?
No, we can. Probably Dave knows specifically some of the sidewalks. More recently, maybe in this area, I don't know off the top of my head, to be honest. But typically the grant sizes it's been about 2,500 minimum for the community development block grant funds. We're actually trying to think about raising the bar on that so that there's more impact from the funding, because it's sort of diluted now. $2,500 doesn't go very far. But anyway, that's really a timely topic. Yeah. But maybe Dave can talk about the sidewalks or.
Yeah, I'm Dave Hutchinson, capital budget manager for the city of Pittsburgh. Sidewalks have definitely been a renewed focus for the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. I think we're all, myself included, getting older, aging in place. We want to stay in the neighborhood that we've lived in for 6 generations. So with that and with...
I didn't live here for 6 generations.
The royal you, the plural you. We. So coupled with that and people going more carless, that's definitely been a huge focus for the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure To an earlier comment, one of the things we really tried to do with this year, based on directly from feedback we got, and a meeting similar to this last year in Kingsley, is to really look at what we're doing and make sure that we're supplementing, not supplanting our existing funds. So this year you may notice that we have a $17 million paving budget. There's $0 in Cdbg because we got pressure last year from somebody in the community who said you should be taking care of this anyway. Don't use CD dollars for this. So that's the tack that we're following this year. Specifically with the sidewalk funds, we really want to use them to build infrastructure that didn't exist before. We don't want to use it just to fix things up. So when we do have Cdbg dollars, we're really using that to replace sidewalks that are completely overgrown and just shot for the last 20 years or never existed in the first place. So that's been a big focus for DOMI.
If I may, I just want to, I don't know that I need this. If I may, what I'm saying, what I was really implying is before we can decide what money we want, we need to do an assessment, like where do we have the most need and where can we make the most improvement that's going to provide homes for people or provide projects. We need to do the assessment before we do anything else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I maybe as a planner, I believe strongly in plans. And I don't know, I don't want to speak out of turn about whether or not Carrick has been part of a comprehensive plan recently, but those can really help because that lays the groundwork for a lot of future work. It kind of gives you a roadmap, because ideally in those documents, there's a housing section and it shows, a roadmap, basically.
How could we discover if we have included a comprehensive study? What would be?
I can find out for you from city planning. I don't know the answer. Sure. I don't know if anyone else knows, any other staff. I don't know if there's one's been done recently here.
So the Department of City Planning has taken the tack now to kind of build the comprehensive plan out of all the neighborhood plans. So right now they're concentrated, I think they're working in Manchester, and there's another neighborhood, maybe it's Lincoln, no, it's not Lincoln, maybe Larimer?
I think
they
it
probably
is,
those choice neighborhoods. With limited funding and resources, they're focusing on 2 to 3 kind of neighborhood plans a year. They do have a methodology to it, and it has to do with the local real estate pressure on the market. When they feel like the market's going to get hot, that's when they want to come in and do, to make sure that the people can stay there, that they're not displaced, that the development that is coming in is adding to the neighborhood and not creating a market that's unsustainable for the people that currently live there. So that's how they've been prioritizing the neighborhood plans. But I would encourage you to talk to your local council member and let them know that that's a big priority for you. Each of the council offices historically have gotten 5 figures. I think last year was $70,000 each in what we call unspecified local option, which is all Cdbg funds to use for public service, but it could also be used for a project like a neighborhood plan.
Yep. Good questions. Well, yeah, sure.
I'm sorry. So the Cdbg funding, does it tend to be more likely for a project to get funding if it already has dollars coming in from other sources? I mean,
like for leveraged?
Yeah. I mean, if like a foundation is giving funds for a project, is it more likely, less likely? Is it dependent on circumstances, case by case?
Yeah, I don't think generally it has. That has been one of the criteria, though that's under discussion for a possible way of looking at it. Particularly given that, as I said, I think the Cdbg funds are half of what they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So you've got real decline, and the needs are just as great, if not greater, right? As you know. So the only way to do that is through leveraging. We're lucky to have strong foundations, Pittsburgh Foundation, Hines Endowments, other foundations in the city. So their funds get leveraged and partnered up with other state and federal funds. But I think it's definitely one thing to look at, and that's actually other cities do look at that as a criteria. Are there other funds coming into a project, and are the Cdbg funds or home funds used as part of that mix, versus just a freestanding one-shot deal.
But you're saying currently that is not a formal criteria?
I don't, is that correct? I don't think it's really one of the key criteria, but
It isn't when we score capital projects in general. So for CD capital projects, it is. That's something that's just a point category, and we use basic math to say how much are you getting from the Heinz endowment, how does that compare to the money that you're asking for, and if the ratio is good, it scores really well.
okay, thanks. Well, we do encourage you to, do the survey, complete the survey if you can. Please be honest and thorough, and let your friends know, and your friends' know, and neighbors. And as I mentioned, if you do have questions after you get home, you think, "Gosh, I wish I'd asked them this question." You can, just call us or email us, and please feel free to do that. And also, as I mentioned, we can't expect everybody to necessarily go right online. We do have hard copies of the survey, so we do have a stack. And if you have friends and neighbors who also just aren't wired and can't get to a computer, please have them complete one of these, and we can work out. We do. Yeah, we have a stack.
Meeting on Monday.
Oh, great.
Maybe we could take them.
Oh, great. Well, call me because we'll figure out a way to get them to us, back to us. We'll think of something to do that. But we appreciate your coming out tonight and hosting us in your community, and appreciate your time. And also, this isn't the end of it, so we'll take your email addresses and email you about the next meetings coming up, once the document's created. So it's an ongoing process, and we hope you stay engaged in the process and keep in touch with us, and we will keep in touch.